I stood under the black canopy, my hand resting on my son Leo's shoulder, feeling the tremors he tried to hide. My husband Marcus was in that box. "A heart attack," the doctor said. "Sudden. Brutal." One minute he was complaining about a client on the phone. The next he was gone. Before we go any further, you need to subscribe. The story you are about to hear will make you question everything. Now, back to it. The priest's words were a soothing, meaningless drone. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I wasn't listening. I was watching the faces in the crowd. Our friends, business associates. Marcus's partner David stood at the front, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking with what looked like genuine sobs. They had built Sterling Solutions from nothing, a tech startup that became a multi-million-dollar empire. They were like brothers, or so I thought. The service ended. People filed past, offering limp handshakes and hollow condolences. He was a great man. "So sorry for your loss, Clara." I nodded, my face a numb mask. Leo leaned into me and I held him tight. He was only 16. Later, at the repast in our sterile, silent house, surrounded by platters of cold cuts and casseroles, I slipped away to the bathroom. I needed a moment away from the pitying stares. I locked the door, leaned against it, and finally let a single sharp sob escape. Then I took a deep breath, splashed water on my face, and pulled my phone from my black dress pocket to check the time. There was a new message from an unknown number. My blood went cold. It wasn't the number. It was the preview text. "Don't believe it. I'm still alive." I stared at the screen. The words didn't make sense. They were a jumble of letters, a prank, a cruel, sick prank. My thumb trembled as I tapped the screen to open the message fully. It was a text message. No image, just those 5 words. "Don't believe it. I'm still alive." A wave of dizziness hit me. I gripped the edge of the marble sink. Marcus. It had to be about Marcus. Who else could it be? My mind, fogged with grief, tried to find logic. A wrong number, a joke. But the timing was too precise, too malicious. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "You know who. They betrayed me. Had to disappear. Play along. Trust no one. Especially David, his partner. The man currently in my living room, comforting my son, playing the grieving friend." Another message came through. A photo this time. It was a selfie. Marcus. He was in a dim, nondescript room, sitting on a cheap-looking bed. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, but it was him. The line of his jaw, the slight scar above his lip from a childhood accident. He was holding that day's newspaper. The world tilted. The floor beneath my feet felt insubstantial. He was alive. The heart attack, the funeral, the casket. It was all a lie. A massive, elaborate, terrifying lie. My grief shattered, and in its place a cold, sharp fury began to crystallize. He had put us through this. He had made me a widow. He had made our son weep at an empty grave. For what? The final message came. The business. David was embezzling, skimming millions. He was going to frame me for it. I found out. This was the only way. I'll explain when it's safe. I love you. Delete this. I read the last 3 words again. I love you. They felt like a violation, a weapon. I heard a knock on the bathroom door. "Mom, you okay in there?" It was Leo. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a moment." My voice sounded strange, too high. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The grieving widow was gone. In her place was a woman who had just been handed a live grenade. I had a role to play, but it was no longer the one I thought. I had to be the devastated wife, while knowing my husband was a fugitive from his own life. I had to smile at David, the man he accused of betrayal, while wondering if he was a thief and a would-be framer, or if my husband was a liar on a scale I couldn't comprehend. I highlighted the message thread. My thumb hovered over the delete button. He had put this on me, this secret, this burden, this danger. I pressed delete. I flushed the toilet, ran the water, and unlocked the door. I forced my face back into the mask of grief. I walked back into the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. David was there, holding a plate of food for me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Here, Clara. You need to keep your strength up." I took the plate. "Thank you, David." My voice was a whisper. "I don't know what we'd do without you." He smiled a sad, gentle smile, and all I could see was the face of the man my faking dead husband claimed was a traitor. My only mistake was thinking my husband had died. His was thinking I would just play the grieving widow. The funeral was over. The game had just begun. The next week was a performance. I played my part perfectly, the listless widow moving through her too-big house like a ghost. I accepted lasagnas and condolences. I held my son when he cried at night, my own tears now fueled by a confusing mix of betrayal and a frantic, secret vigilance. Every ring of the doorbell, every unknown number on my phone, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Was it him? Was it someone else? I started seeing the cracks in Marcus's story, the ones I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice before. The late nights at the office had become more frequent in the last 6 months. The business trips he'd taken alone. He'd been distant, irritable, his mind always somewhere else. I'd chalked it up to stress. Now I saw it as preparation. I had to know more. I had to understand what he had done and what danger he had left us in. If David was really a criminal, were we safe? If Marcus was lying, what was his real game? I waited until Leo was at school. Then I went into Marcus's home office. The police hadn't been involved. It was a clear-cut medical event, so his things were untouched. The room still smelled like him, his cologne and the particular scent of the leather on his chair. It made my chest ache with a fresh, complicated grief. I started with his computer. Password protected, of course. I tried the obvious ones. Leo's birthday, our anniversary. Nothing. I thought about the message. They betrayed me. I typed in David Traitor. The screen unlocked. My heart thudded. He'd left me a key. He knew I would look. The desktop was unnervingly clean. No random files, no family photos. Just a few folders. One was labeled Funeral Arrangements. I opened it. It contained scans of a life insurance policy. A massive $5 million policy he'd taken out just 3 months ago. The beneficiary was me. Next to it was a PDF of his will, recently updated. It was all so orderly, prepared. Another folder was named Legacy. Inside, I found it. The blueprint. It wasn't a building plan. It was a step-by-step guide, written in a cold, clinical tone, as if for a business project. Phase 1. The event. Medical documentation acquired. Body double secured and prepared. Disposal handled. Funeral proceedings outlined. See Funeral Arrangements folder. Phase 2. The fallout. Allow grief period. 2-3 weeks. Monitor David's actions at Sterling Solutions. He will make his move to consolidate power and access restricted accounts. Phase 3. The revelation. Contact initiated with C. She will guide the next steps. Trust her judgment implicitly. Phase 4. The reckoning. Evidence package delivered to authorities. David's embezzlement exposed. Control of Sterling Solutions re-established. Darcy. That was me. Clara. He had written me into his insane plan as a central character. Trust her judgment implicitly. The arrogance was staggering. He fakes his death, abandons his family, and expects me to simply pick up his script and play my part. But it was the last file in the folder that made the breath catch in my throat. It was a financial audit of Sterling Solutions, conducted by a private forensic accountant Marcus had hired. It detailed everything. David had been siphoning money for years, not just skimming. He had set up dummy vendors, inflated invoices, and funneled over $20 million into offshore accounts. The evidence was overwhelming. David hadn't just betrayed him. He had been systematically looting the company they built together. Marcus's plan, as deranged as it was, started to make a sick kind of sense. If he had confronted David openly, it would have been a messy public legal battle. David would have hidden the money, possibly even framed Marcus. By faking his death, Marcus had forced David into the open. He was counting on David getting greedy and sloppy, believing the one man who could stop him was gone. He was using his own death as a trap, and he was using me as the bait. I sat back in his chair, the leather groaning. The man I had married was a strategist of breathtaking coldness. He had orchestrated this entire nightmare, gambling with our emotions, our safety, our future. My phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown number. "Have you looked?" He was checking in. He was watching. I felt a fresh wave of anger. He was out there somewhere, alive, while I was here sitting in the wreckage of the life he blew up. I didn't reply. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. But I also knew I couldn't ignore this. David was in my house last week, smiling, hugging my son. A man who stole $20 million was capable of anything. If he suspected Marcus was alive, or if he felt threatened by me, what would he do? Marcus's plan was in motion. I was now a player in a game I never agreed to join. I could walk away, expose everything to the police, and create a chaos I couldn't control. Or I could see it through. I could follow the blueprint, not for Marcus, but for Leo, to secure his future, to ensure the man who betrayed his father faced justice. My only mistake was thinking I knew my husband. Now I was learning he was a master manipulator, and I was his chosen pawn. But a pawn that knows it's in a game can become a queen, and I was just starting to learn the rules. The blueprint was a ghost in the machine of my life. For 2 weeks I performed the role of the grieving widow with an Oscar-worthy dedication. I let Leo skip school. I let friends organize meal trains. I let David from Sterling Solutions handle the mountain of corporate paperwork that follows a CEO's death, just as Marcus had predicted he would. David was at the house often, a portrait of weary competence, always asking if I needed anything. What I needed was to not flinch every time he looked at me. I saw him now not as a grieving friend, but as a predator who had picked my husband's carcass clean. The private audit's numbers danced in my head. $20 million. I followed phase 2 of the blueprint. Monitor David's actions. I started small. I logged into the shared family cloud account, the one we used for vacation photos. Marcus, in his meticulousness, had also used it to sync his personal calendar. I scanned the months before his death. The late nights were there, but also cryptic entries. Dinner, LS. Meeting, the shed. LS? The shed. I'd assumed LS was a client. Now I wondered. I needed to get into Sterling Solutions. According to the blueprint, David would be making his move to access restricted accounts. Marcus's plan banked on it. But I couldn't just walk in. I was the emotional widow, not a forensic accountant. The unknown number buzzed. No greeting, just an address downtown and a time 2 p.m. tomorrow. Then another message. Wear the black coat, the one from our anniversary. Our anniversary dinner at the Oak Room. He'd loved that coat. A wave of nausea hit me. He was directing me, costuming me, from beyond the grave. This was phase 3, the revelation. Contact initiated with CI didn't reply, but at 1:45 p.m. the next day, I was putting on the black coat. It felt like a uniform for a war I hadn't enlisted in. Leo was at a friend's house. I drove downtown, my knuckles white on the wheel. The address was for a nondescript building, sandwiched between a pawn shop and a closed-down bookstore. The buzzer for Suite 3C had no name. I pressed it. The door clicked open. The office was small, Spartan, and smelled of stale coffee. A woman sat behind a cheap metal desk. She was in her late 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a severe black bob. She didn't smile. "Clara, I'm Isabel. Sit down." "Who are you?" I asked, remaining standing. "I'm the one your husband paid to keep you and your son safe while he pulls off this idiotic stunt," she said, her voice dry and unimpressed. "I'm private security, former FBI." So this was my guide. Marcus hadn't just left a file. He'd hired a handler. "He's alive," I stated, testing her. "Regrettably, yes," she replied, not missing a beat. "And his plan, while dramatic, has one critical flaw. He underestimated David's paranoia. David's already hired his own people. He's having you watched." The air left my lungs. I instinctively glanced at the window, its blinds drawn. "Don't worry." I spotted them. 2 guys in a gray sedan. Amateurs. She leaned forward. "Here's the situation. David is indeed moving. He's called a board meeting for Friday to vote on dissolving Marcus's controlling shares and transferring them to him, citing the instability of the estate. Once he has that, he can legitimize the stolen funds, and you'll be left with nothing." This was the move Marcus had waited for. But the blueprint didn't mention I was under surveillance. What do I do? The question felt weak, but it was all I had. Isabel slid a small, thin device, like a credit card, across the desk. "This is a shielded USB drive. On it is a copy of the audit. Marcus's original plan was for you to leak it to the press after the board vote, to maximize David's humiliation. We're accelerating the timeline. Why? Because David isn't just going to take your money, Clara. He's getting nervous. He started to ask questions about the body, the lack of an open casket, the rushed cremation. If he gets suspicious, you and your son become liabilities. He needs to be taken down before the board meeting." Her words were ice water. This wasn't a corporate game anymore. It was about survival. "Your task," she continued, "is to get this to someone who can act on it immediately. Not the police. They're too slow. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. I've set up an anonymous drop. There's a public library on 5th Avenue. Go to the 3rd floor study carrel 12B. There's a gap in the paneling beneath the desk. Leave the drive there. Do not get caught. If David's watchers see you do anything suspicious, this ends badly." She handed me a library card. It wasn't mine. It was under a fake name. "This gets you in. Cameras are looped for a 20-minute window starting at 3:15 M today. You're a grieving widow returning books. That's your cover." I took the drive and the card. They felt heavy as lead. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Because your husband is a fool, but he's paying me a small fortune. And because men like David deserve to be in a cage," she said flatly. "Now go. You have 40 minutes. I walked out of the office, my heart hammering. The gray sedan was still there. I could see the silhouette of a man in the passenger seat. I got into my car and drove, not too fast, not too slow, toward the library. I was a delivery system, a pawn being moved across the board by a ghost and his hired gun. My only mistake was thinking I had a choice. Now I was in the maze, and the walls were closing in. The watchers were behind me. The trap was ahead, and my husband's voice was in my ear, guiding me deeper into the dark. The public library was a temple of quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. The air smelled of old paper and floor wax. I clutched the strap of my purse, the shielded USB drive, feeling like a radioactive brick inside. I forced my breathing to stay even. Grieving widow returning books. Just a grieving widow. Quick, direct voiceover. The tension is at a breaking point. What happens in this library will change everything. Subscribe now. I saw them immediately. The two men from the gray sedan. They'd followed me in. One pretended to browse the mystery section, his gaze flicking toward me. The other loitered near the periodicals. Amateurs, Isabel had said, but they were still dangerous. My cover was thin. I had a tote bag with 2 actual library books I'd grabbed from home. I walked to the main desk, my legs feeling like wood. I smiled weakly at the librarian and slid the books across with the fake library card. "Just these today," I said, my voice a hushed, respectful whisper. The script was writing itself. She scanned them, nodded, and I moved away. Now for the hard part. I walked toward the stairs, feeling 4 eyes burning into my back. I couldn't go straight to the 3rd floor. That would be too direct. I went to the 2nd floor, pretending to browse the fiction section. I saw one of the watchers mirror my movement on the far side of the room. My pulse thundered in my ears. I was a mouse in a maze with 2 cats casually following. I had to lose them, just for a minute. I drifted into the women's restroom. I stood in a stall, counting to 60, listening. The door didn't open. Had I lost them? Or were they just waiting outside? I flushed the toilet for effect, washed my hands, and stepped out. The hallway was clear. This was my chance. I moved quickly, not running, but with purpose, to the stairwell and up to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor was quieter, dedicated to reference and private study. My eyes scanned the carrels. 10A, 10B, 12B. It was in the back corner, partially obscured by a large bookshelf. Perfect. I slid into the hard plastic chair, placing my purse on the desk. My hands were trembling. I opened my purse, my fingers closing around the cold, hard edge of the USB drive. I glanced around. No one. I could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. Now. I bent down as if to pick up a dropped pen. Under the desk, my fingers found the seam in the particle board, just as Isabel had described. A small, loose panel. I pried it open with my fingernails, slid the USB drive into the darkness, and let the panel snap back into place. It was done. I stood up, my knees weak with relief. I had done it. I turned to leave, and froze. The watcher from the periodicals section was standing at the end of the row of carrels, leaning against a bookshelf, watching me. He hadn't been browsing. He'd been waiting. He knew I'd come here. Our eyes met. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just watched me. A silent, chilling confirmation that I had been made. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I had to get out. I walked past him, refusing to look away, holding his gaze until I was past. I felt his eyes on my back all the way to the stairwell. I practically ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw the gray sedan pull out 2 cars behind me. They weren't even hiding anymore. My phone buzzed. Isabel. They know. Abort the drop. Do not go home. Go to the safe location, now. It was too late. The drop was done. But they knew I was part of something. Another message from the unknown number. Marcus, you were followed. They'll come for you. Go to the place we first met. The place we first met. A dive bar called O'Malley's that had been torn down 5 years ago to build a parking garage. It was a test, a code. He was telling me he knew the message was compromised. He was warning me not to trust the instructions. Isabel or Marcus? The handler or the ghost? The gray sedan was tailgating me now. I made a sudden, illegal U-turn, horns blaring. I had to lose them. I weaved through side streets, my heart in my throat, pushing my sedan harder than I ever had. I saw an underground parking entrance and swerved into it, taking the ticket and plunging into the dim, cool cavern. I drove to the darkest, deepest corner and killed the engine, slumping over the wheel, breathing in ragged gasps. I listened. No engine sounds, no tires squealing. Had I lost them? I looked at my phone. 2 conflicting commands, 2 potential betrayals. My only mistake was thinking I could just be a delivery girl. I had delivered the package, but I had also painted a target on my back. The game was no longer about evidence. It was about survival. And I was alone in the dark, not knowing who to trust. I sat in the darkness of the parking garage for an hour, my mind racing. The gray sedan was gone, for now. But they knew my car. They knew where I lived. Isabel's warning echoed. Do not go home. Marcus's message was a cryptic lie. I was on my own. Subscribe for more incredible true stories. I had one move left. The blueprint was compromised. My handlers were suspect. But the evidence was now in the hands of the SEC. That part was done. I couldn't run. That would leave Leo exposed. I had to go on the offensive. I drove to a payphone outside a rundown grocery store. A relic Marcus would have found amusing. I called David's direct line at Sterling Solutions. He answered on the second ring, his voice oozing false concern. Clara? Is everything all right? You sound stressed. They know, David, I said, my voice shaking with manufactured terror. The people who are watching me, they know about the money. They threatened me. They said if I didn't get them the rest of the audit files from Marcus's home safe, they'd hurt Leo. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I had his complete attention. What people? What are you talking about? I don't know, but they knew about the offshore accounts in the Caymans, the dummy vendors. They know everything you did. I let a sob crack my voice. David, I'm scared. I have the combination to the safe. Meet me at the house in 30 minutes, please. You have to help me get these files so they'll leave us alone. I hung up before he could respond. It was a desperate, dangerous gamble. I was betting on his greed and his paranoia. He would come. He couldn't risk that audit falling into the wrong hands, any hands other than his own. He would see this as a chance to secure the last piece of incriminating evidence. I drove home, my heart a trip hammer. I didn't have the combination to any safe, but I knew David would believe Marcus had one. I was waiting in the living room when his car screeched to a halt outside. He burst in, his face pale, his usual composure gone. Where is it? The safe? In his office, I said, leading him in. He knelt by the large floor safe, hidden behind a panel in the wall. The combination, he demanded. I forgot it, I stammered, playing the panicked widow. It's a sequence, something about betrayal. Think, Clara, he snarled, his mask slipping completely. The grieving partner was gone, replaced by a cornered, frantic criminal. And that's when the front door opened. Not with a key, but with a quiet, professional click. Isabel walked in, followed by 2 men in suits. Federal agents. Their badges were out. David froze, his hand still on the safe. David Chen, one of the agents said, his voice flat. You are under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. David's eyes widened in horror, then darted to me. The realization dawned on him. There was no safe, no other criminals. There was just me, the trap he had walked right into. You. He breathed, pure venom in his voice. I said nothing. I just watched as they read him his rights and cuffed him. Isabel gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The drop at the library had worked. The SEC had moved faster than anyone anticipated, and my panicked call had lured the rat out of his hole, right into the hands of the waiting cats. As they led him away, my phone buzzed. The unknown number. It's done. You were magnificent. I looked at the message, then at Isabel. Was it you? Were you the one texting me? She shook her head. No, those came from him. I was just the contingency plan. Marcus. He had been watching the whole time. A week later, the story was all over the financial news. David's arrest, the massive fraud at Sterling Solutions. The stock plummeted, but the company was salvaged. My name was kept out of it. The official story was a whistleblower from within the company. I was in my new kitchen, in a new house in a different state, unpacking a box. Leo was outside, kicking a soccer ball, finally looking like a kid again. The doorbell rang. I opened it. He was standing there. Marcus. He looked older, thinner, his face etched with a tension that hadn't been there before. "Clara," he said. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I felt nothing but a vast, empty calm. "It's over," I said. "I know. I came to explain, to apologize. You put our son through hell. You used me as bait. There is no explanation. There is no apology," he flinched. "I had to. It was the only way to protect you both from him. If I'd confronted him, he would have destroyed us. You did destroy us," I said quietly. "The family we had is gone. You killed it when you chose that coffin." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something real in his eyes. Not the master strategist, not the ghost. Just a man who had lost everything by trying to control everything. "The life insurance money," he started, "is mine," I finished. "And Leo's. You're legally dead. Stay that way." I closed the door. I didn't watch him walk away. I turned the lock and went back to unpacking, to building a new life from the ashes of the old. My husband faked his death for revenge. He thought he was the puppet master. But in the end, I was the one who held the scissors. I cut the strings, took the money, and walked away from his ghost. He got his revenge, and I got my freedom. My only mistake was ever believing in him, and my victory was learning that the greatest revenge is a life lived well without him in it.